Hello, 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 fellow supermoms. Nadine here. Welcome to another episode of the Special Needs Supermom podcast. And this is a very special episode because today, December 14th, is my 1 year ADHD anniversary. 1 year ago, today, I got my official diagnose. And yes, I'm celebrating that. Why? Well, not because my, life beforehand wasn't manageable. I did without a diagnosis for 45 years. Had my own business, went to college, managed to get a degree, and all without having a diagnosis. Yet I was a dreamer, and in my report cards it said, often drifts away, has a lot of fantasy, but it all, seemed to work just fine. And we have Wonder Boy, who's now 18, almost 19, with autism and ADHD. The funny thing is, I never connected any of his struggles with mine. Everything I was going through, overwhelm or stress, the burnout a couple of years ago, having all the ideas, I just connect with, I'm a special needs mom, I'm always really busy, I have my own business, I've got a podcast, I do a lot of volunteer work for the Dutch Juvenile Arthritis Association, I'm a people pleaser, and I'm really creative. So, of course, I have a really busy mind. But I was still functioning just fine. And after interviewing someone for this podcast, a young woman with ADHD, I went like, wait, I'm hearing myself. And not that we had similar lives or anything, but the way she talked and the things she described, I went like, oh my gosh, this is me. Let's just, for the fun of it, find out if I've got ADHD as well. It might be interesting to see what kind of process it is for adults. It will be interesting for the podcast. I will learn something about it, but I didn't think much of it. I was looking forward to it. I was really seeing it as a spa day. Why? Because I left the house early in the morning. I came back in the evening. So it was just me. I didn't have to pay attention to anyone. Everybody knew I was, I couldn't rescue my kids, driving them back and forward. It was just about me. So I really saw it as a spa day for myself. And so why celebrating? Besides the fact that it felt like a spa day, did it cure my ADHD? Well, no, and thankfully not, because I really like who I am. I like me being quirky and really creative and chaotic. I have no problems with that whatsoever. And the same goes for my husband. He really didn't get it that I was going to get a diagnosis. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here now, but quoting one of my favorite movie quotes from Bridget Jones' Diary. I like you just the way you are, very much. Or my husband will say, I love you just the way you are. So, why would you get a diagnosis? You're doing fine, you have your own business, and you're never finishing a sentence anyway. What's going to change now? I'm like, I'm really curious how it is, how it goes, a diagnosis like that. And I went to like a specialized ADHD clinic. It was a whole day. So I had a talk with a specialist nurse, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. I had 2 computer tests. Beforehand, there were all these questionnaires I had to fill in. And the funny thing is, I had a different answer than my husband. So they had questions like, are you struggling with blah, blah, blah. And with most of the things, I went like, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And my husband was like, no, she's fine. No, she's fine. So in my head, there was this daily struggle going on and all the noise and all the... But apparently to the outside world, I didn't seem to struggle that much. Yes, I had a lot on my mind, but special needs mom, like I said, and our kids needed a lot of guidance and my own business. But I did a lot. I just had to learn to say no to more stuff. That was kind of the overall consensus. If I would just say no more, it would be fine. Anyhow, so he didn't really get it that I was going to get a diagnosis. I was just really curious for the podcast, how it, kind of understanding the process for my son. And I thought, I'd probably get some useful tips out of it, but I don't need to change anything because I'm just doing fine. Until after the diagnose. And I think that made biggest difference. So I got my diagnose and, I had extensive talks with a psychiatrist and psychologist, the specialist nurse. And the reason they do that, they said, was because there's a lot of overlap with autism, burnout, depression, when you're perimenopause, which makes ADHD worse. So things I struggled with, there might be a woman out there or a man out there or kids that kind of struggle with the same stuff, like, being disorganized, for instance, or forgetting appointments. That doesn't automatically mean that you have ADHD. So they were really thorough. And I had to show my report cards and I was like, I was doing fine. I wasn't an excellent student. Yes, I was dreamy. So what? But it was the talk with all those specialists. And I had to do 2 computer tests. One with medication, one without medication. And that was the only difference, the only off thing. I had to sit in front of a computer screen. And for 20 minutes, they showed me a red dot or a blue dot, a red square or a blue square, something like that. And when, and it was, kind of flashy. And when I was shown the same as the prior image, I had to click a button. And I had this band around my head and they measured, my movements and everything. And that's where, it was really apparent that I move a lot. I know that I talk with my hands. I can't, for the life of me, can't understand that people don't talk with their hands. Or have the same monotone voice, because my voice tends to go all over the place. If I'm excited or sad or, angry or, you can tell from my voice. When I used to read books to my kids, I had all these little voices and gestures. So what I wanted to say is, normally they said that was the only thing off. Normally people with ADHD fail on this test, but I'm really competitive. So I was going to ace this, and I come from a family of, playing games and everything, so there's some rivalry and I want to win. I just found it really boring at the end. I was like, okay, please throw in another color, because now I've seen all the red circles and the blue circles and whatever. So yes, I aced the test, and normally a lot of people with ADHD can't, at least not without medication. But they said, well, do you know the term hyperfocus? And I said, yes, we know that from our son. yeah, and I know you're talking about your son now, but are you ever, totally in a zone when you're working or reading? I said, oh, all the time. My husband will, come in my office saying, weren't you supposed to go somewhere at 6, or weren't you supposed to? How can you forget every day, well, if I don't set an alarm and I'm writing a text for a client, or when I was a kid reading a book, you could, launch a grenade next to me and I would not have noticed as a kid. And they said, well, yeah, that's hyper focus for you. But it's really special on your, that level. What was really ADHD, however, was the fact that, so I had this tape around my head and they measured my movements. And those movements said something about, I moved my head in those 20 minutes, 26 meters. And in total, I made like 13,700 micro movements. And I went like, yeah, but doesn't everybody move their heads? And he said, yeah, but a normal amount is 400 or 500. And you have 13,700. That's a lot of movement. You walked 26 meters with your head in 20 minutes. That's ADHD. Well, combined with all the talks, so I got my diagnose. And not just a little bit, I graduated summa cum laude. Really proud of it. And that kind of amazed me. I didn't realize I really was ADHD. And I read a lot about ADHD. But for Wonder Boy, but that was all connected to him and what he did and his needs. And I never connected the dots for myself. So after my diagnose, at the ADHD Institute, it's normally if you go there and you get confirmed the diagnosis, you follow some form of therapy and try out medication. So cognitive behavioral therapy. And for me, in this case, it was Ritalin. And I remember her saying, well, medication is still the first line when we're going to treat ADHD. And I went like, this is ridiculous. Yes, I said I would agree to it, but why? It's just about being zen and saying no to stuff more, and I just need to, shouldn't be such a people pleaser. Don't say yes to every new project that comes along. But anyhow, she said, well, I really want you to try it anyway. And that was the first time, so I tried it for a couple of weeks. And a lot of people are afraid with medication that their creativity will disappear or that you get depressed or anything like that. But if you have a good doctor, and if you listen to Edward Hallowell or John Ratey talk about it, who wrote ADHD 2.0, what I can, if there's one book you read about ADHD or listen to, if there's an Audible available of it, read ADHD 2.0, because those were the pioneers, and they rewrote the book, and it's one big aha, wow, what? It explains so much about struggles, but also how you can be helped. What you can do yourself also. And now I dove into this typical rabbit hole, which I now know is ADHD. But what I want to say, so I tried medication for a couple of weeks and went like, okay. And it did not change me. I was still me. I'm still bubbly, I still have a lot of energy. But the big difference is that I can really focus on the task I'm working on. And normally, so I'm a technical copywriter. That's my other business. And I love making nerds sexy. I really like. I always written. I made my first magazine when I was 8 years old. My dad had a printing business, so I had all the paper and stuff available. I always wrote. And I really like technical copywriting. I really try to make, geek speak available for the non-nerd. But what was bothering me was when I was writing an article or when I was interviewing people for my clients for a white paper or a blog or an article in a magazine, I got distracted really quickly. So I normally had my notepad, and if they answered something and I didn't write it down, I would forget it. So I wrote a lot, recorded a lot. I have to go back and forth. So I struggled because I got distracted in the process itself. Whether it was writing an article or for the ADHD podcast or the Special Needs Supermom podcast, I was designing a digital planner and stuff like that. But when doing that, in my head there were also other things going on. Oh, I shouldn't remember, I shouldn't forget to call that person. Or, what did they say again? And then I had to, during an interview, I had to go back a few pages, seeing that answer again. So my mind was everywhere. But, and it wasn't until I started medication that I went like, I still have all the ideas and I'm still really, creativity doesn't die. It doesn't disappear when you are on the right medication. And that was one of the things I think Dr. Hallowell said, that, if you're, becoming a lot of people are afraid, a lot of parents are afraid that they lose, your kid is going to change or be different or become a zombie. I know my parents were really, afraid when one of the boys started medication that he would turn into this zombie, and then it's not the right medication. I was fortunate enough that, the first medication, I had to up the dose a bit, but after that it worked fine. I needed a couple of weeks to get used to it. But after that it was fine. Wonder Boy, on the other hand, probably because of his combination with autism, it's much harder. But we also knew, we had a good psychiatrist, and he said, he should not feel, like a zombie or depressed or things like that. Then he needs something extra, or it's not for him. And for me, it cleared my mind. That was the only thing it did. So I could focus way better. And because of that, I was much faster. Writing went twice as fast. I could focus better. And because there's no noise in my head constantly, I'm not so tired by the end of the day. And I would normally say, in the beginning I said, it's like the Ritalin for me is like a glass of wine. Or, well, maybe 2 glasses of wine. Because normally, if I would drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine, it would not kind of relax me, numb me. But really, do you want alcohol to have that effect? So, it's kind of like drinking 2 glasses of wine. Besides, if I drink 2 glasses of wine on my age, I fall asleep on the couch. I'm that old. And it's nothing like that. So it really helped me clear my mind. And cognitive behavioral therapy, like I said, is a really practical therapy. Gave me so much useful information that really helped me as well, being faster in work, being able to focus more, not lose stuff. One of the things I learned was that, for instance, I had a notebook for every separate thing. Because, I like to keep things separate. The downside of that was that the moment I closed the notebook, I forgot. So one of the things they said to me, first, have one notebook. Okay, how many agendas do you have? I said, well, Google, and I've got my iCal, and then I've got a paper diary or paper agenda as well. Okay, how's it working out for you? Well, so I had to integrate those things. And it sounds so simple. And not that it went great overnight, not at all. But it really made a lot of difference. And the funny thing, the most interesting thing is I had special needs supermom burnout about 3 years ago. And a lot of the things I talked about with my therapist then, I wasn't surprised, they never said anything, but the similarities, the things I was struggling with, not being able to say no. Extreme people pleaser, but also a chronic over planner and underestimating time. So one of the things I learned 3 years ago when I was, I had a burnout was, okay, write down everything you do in a day. She said, everything. That includes walking the dog. That includes loading the dishwasher. That includes doing some laundry. Write down how long it actually takes. Write down how long you think it takes and how long it actually takes. That was a big eye-opener because I thought, weekend grocery shopping where I would get all the groceries for the week ahead, that would be an hour. No, it wasn't. In total, with all because that was something I thought, I just go to the grocery store, do the groceries, go back, that's the grocery shopping. No, because it's making the list and putting everything in the cupboards and things like that. It took me at least twice as long. And I never penciled in the laundry, the typical little cleaning up after your kids' stuff. And when I, for the first time, wrote down all the things I did, really all the things I did, and the time it took, I went like, well, it makes sense that I can never ever finish my to-do lists. I felt guilty every day that I didn't finish the task I had on my to-do list. But by, making time visible, I went like, there's no way on earth I can fit all this stuff, in a day, well, in a week, let alone a day. And that's something I talked about with my ADHD therapist as well, but I already had that down. But it's one of the key essential things, the time blindness, the constant over-planning and underestimating time. That deadly combination is also one of the things they teach you during ADHD therapy, but I'm pretty convinced they also teach you, when you're burnt out. And there were other similarities as well that I think, the therapy, the things they taught me would also be very useful in regular therapy. Thinking about yourself. Prioritizing yourself. And let's be honest, moms, there is no prioritizing yourself when you have a kid with special needs that needs attention. That's utter bullshit. But what you can learn is how to find little moments during the day, and especially when you have young ones and they need an intense care. And don't forget that when you have kid in high school or a kid that goes to college. And in the Netherlands, it's a bit different. Both my kids are in college, but they still live at home. You don't have those big dorms like you have in the States in the Netherlands. Yes, you can live in a student house, but it's nothing like the States. And we're also a very small country, so there's really not always a need to live close to your university or your college. And now I got sidetracked again. What did I want to say? Yep, totally gone. Might come back to you. Might come back to me. But there are a lot of that I do remember. There are a lot of similarities between if you're struggling with burnout or depression, and the therapy I got for ADHD, because the price are how to find time for yourself or how to find you again, because that was something I really struggled with, because in my head I had this idea of going to the university or going to college, and then I would find my guy, and then we would both raise our kids together, and I would have this great corporate career. And I left the corporate world because there was no way on earth I could, and not could, but also didn't want to combine it with my kids. Especially with Supergirl, we had to, you never knew when she had a flare and I had to go back home or things like that. So I just couldn't manage that, and I really had to find myself again. And I see that with a lot of special needs moms, especially in the first years, that when all the attention is to taking care of your kid, it's easy to forget about yourself or kind of lose yourself because you lose touch with your inner self, who you were and what you wanted to do in life. And sometimes it's really hard to combine things, if you have a kid that is really dependent on you and you have to do a lot of stuff. How on earth are you going to start working again or, change your career path if you want to? I had to dug deep, and in the end I just came back with what I always did. Writing and designing. I did it as a small kid. I just had to accept and be okay with, I don't have to have a corporate career to be successful. You don't have to have a career to be successful. What is success? The big life questions. Maybe really good at the end of this year. So yay. I'm celebrating my first ADHD birthday, really. And I'm really glad I got the diagnosis. Because it helped me find, I was always myself, but I'm more me now. I can enjoy myself more now. Not that ADHD is an excuse for stuff I forget or don't do, but it's a reason. And because of that, the whole blame game, because I'm so good in blaming myself. I'm not doing this perfectly and I'm not doing that great. And now I know but there's a reason for it. And some stuff, I will always be time blind. But I know that's why I integrate everything in my Tick app. Tick is I can integrate my agenda in it. I can put to-dos in it with hourly timers and everything like that. So it helps me relax more, I think you can say that. Because I followed, I never thought I needed tips. Because, I had my business and I was doing just fine, but it really did improve my life. Not that I still don't finish sentences. I still have all the ideas. I still tend to be timeline to the max. But I don't blame myself for that anymore. And I have tools that help me achieve and do the things I really want to do. So, if you're, a mom with ADHD kids and you're struggling with, whether or not medication or what kind of therapy, I've got a whole lot of episodes about ADHD and therapy, but therapy in general. I think what kind of therapy does your kid really need and resources. And I think I had a specific episode beginning of this year about medication and ADHD, or whether it's an excuse or not. It's not an excuse, it's a reason, and it can be really helpful. So I hope that this podcast episode, first and foremost allows you, you're okay with all the time blindness or whatever you're struggling with. You're okay. You're doing just fine. But know that, getting a diagnose can really help you and your kid as well. Medication. No, it's not a wonder drug, but oh boy, can it make a difference. Does that mean that if you have ADHD, I'm advocating that everybody should be on medication? No. I do think, making some life changes or implementing some hacks, like, setting alarms and really writing down all your things for today and the time it takes. Things like that can really make a huge impact. And the same as meditation or maybe prayer, exercise can really help as well. And that's proven. It's a proven fact that exercise really helps. And combining all those things in your own dopamine menu can really help, especially when you're stuck and you can't even think about doing something that can help you relax and unwind. And then having a dopamine menu right in front of you is great. So I'm totally celebrating my ADHD birthday. Because yes, I was doing just fine beforehand, but I'm doing so much better. And the most interesting part is that I reconnected with Wonder Boy on a different level. Because beforehand, I saw the struggles in my head as separate of the things he was struggling with. And now, because I'm looking at it from a different perspective, also because he's getting older, I think, it's really interesting to talk about and how he approaches things. And I always noticed that at a certain level, or, it was great that he found his own hacks that helped him and that he's expressing what he needs. But being an adult, you can have, different conversations with your kid. And yeah, it's been quite a journey. If you're struggling, or if you think, well, maybe I've got ADHD as well, do know that, I'm sorry, ADHD, if your kid has it, there's a big chance that it's coming from one of his parents. And there's nothing wrong with being, having ADHD or autism or whatever. I think you can have a great life. Why not? I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of creative people have ADHD. And where would Silicon Valley be without ADHD and autism people? So I really have to stop because I've got this tickly kind of cough going on. If you're struggling with certain stuff and you wonder if you perhaps have ADHD or not, or autism or depression or burnout, therapy does wonders, and finding out and getting an assessment can really help. Connecting you with your inner self and making the most out of your life. Or maybe, after the diagnosis, you're like, I'm doing pretty darn good. And that's totally fine too. I think, some people struggle with getting a label because they are afraid of the stigma. If my kid gets an ADHD label, the stigma. Ask yourself, how is your kid doing now? Is it going that great in school? If you're on the verge of getting a diagnosis or not. ADHD doesn't mean annoying little brat that runs around. Can we be annoying and run around? Yeah. But it can really, if you know where to find the tools, and maybe have meds, it can make such a difference to the quality of life. Not only in focusing, but also in connecting with other people, making friends in school, perhaps maybe also as an adult. I definitely do think also as an adult, because now sometimes you can explain something, or just give people a heads up. Really enthusiastic at the moment, just let me ramble, and my friends know that about me, but I will also tell them, if I keep on rambling, just cut right through it. This is totally fine. So getting a diagnosis and treatment. No, I think the combination of therapy and medication is a golden, now I'm forgetting the word. I think it's the best combination. Or at least, if you struggle with something, or your kid is struggling with something, see what needs to be addressed. And, are his classmates struggling, or is your kid struggling with something? Is there a disconnected communication? And ask your kid, if they're old enough, and often at 4 or 5 years old, they know perfectly well what works for them and what doesn't work, and where they need help with or not. So listen to your kids, observe your kids, but also, there's nothing wrong with getting a diagnosis. It can really, really be insightful for you as a parent, or for yourself as a partner, and for your kid as well. So that was my really long Happy Me 1 year ADHD anniversary episode. If you have any questions, or you have stuff you struggle with, let me know. Leave a comment, send me a personal message on Instagram or on Facebook, where you can find the Special Needs Supermom podcast as well. And if you prefer to have a more private group on Facebook, there is a private group. I'm sorry, dads, but it's only for special needs moms, where you can, cry, laugh, ask questions, interact with moms like you. That was it for today. I hope you have, if I don't talk to you, or if you don't hear me before Christmas, I hope you have a lovely, lovely holiday. I will record a quick episode, I think extra, on how to be resilient and during the holidays, and your kids, whether you're traveling or not, how you can stay sane during the holidays. And I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.